We are 5 races into the 2023 season, and I thought it would be a good time to take a look at the drivers and talk about my top 5 best and my top 5 worst drivers so far in 2023. Now, I've got my list locked and ready to go. I'm going to do my top 5 best first and then do the worst, top 5 worst afterwards. And of course, don't forget to let me know your top 5 in the comments box below as well. Now, to begin my top 5, I wanted to give one of the spots in my top 5 to one of the midfield drivers outside of Red Bull, outside of Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, because we have a very kind of Formula 1 and then Formula 1.5, you know, for the guys in the midfield, it is a scrap out there because if each of the top 4 teams finishes in the points like they should, there's only 2 points paying positions kind of left for everyone else to scrap over. So it's going to be difficult for the guys in the midfield to really stand out, but I wanted to give at least one spot to kind of, you know, give someone in the midfield who I think is doing a really good job a bit of a shout out. So in 5th place, I have actually got Yuki Tsunoda. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have been massively impressed by Yuki going up against Nyck De Vries, who's obviously struggling, and we're going to talk about him later on. He is currently beating him 4-1 in qualifying, and to be honest, when I look at Yuki Tsunoda in the championship, and I mentioned this in a previous video of mine, he currently sits 16th in the championship, and some of the drivers above him, I think he's had a way better season than quite a lot of them. And when you look at how much he's improved over last year, I think he's done a fantastic job of kind of grabbing that mantle at AlphaTauri as their number 1, their solid, reliable point scorer, especially with Pierre Gasly leaving the team. So yeah, I've been massively surprised how amazing he's been and also how consistent. I mean, when you look at his 5 races so far, he has finished 11th, 11th, 10th, 10th, and then 11th. I mean, you know, Saudi Arabia, if he doesn't get overtaken by K-Mag late in the race, you know, if a few more things kind of go his way, and also if the kind of top end of the grid wasn't as competitive, he could have scored points in each of the opening 5 races. And, you know, doing that in a car that is clearly struggling, yeah, I think Yuki has just been, I feel like he's gotten almost under the radar because of how low he is in the championship, but I think his speed, consistency, and also mindset being much more mature in terms of what I could tell from interviews, yeah, I have been really impressed. And again, I wanted to give one driver in the actual midfield a shout out in my top 5 best. So yeah, Yuki goes in number 5. Next up in number 4, I have got Lewis Hamilton. Now, again, it's super close out of kind of that 3-pack or the 6-pack of drivers of those 3 teams, you know, the likes of Mercedes, Aston Martin, Ferrari. And I've got Lewis here because I feel like the drivers are really making the difference. Now, to be honest, you could almost kind of interchange him and George. I think both of them have been really good. George obviously had that kind of bit of bad luck in Australia, but Lewis has picked up the pieces. I mean, I think in qualifying, he has definitely been struggling because, you know, George so far has actually out-qualified him 1-4. So yeah, Lewis definitely kind of lagging a little bit in quali, but in the races, even though he's kind of lacking a little bit in quali, in the races, you can just see that quality. He's so good at kind of managing the situations, and I think he's done a really good job currently sitting 4th in the Drivers' Championship. You know, that's, I feel like for where Mercedes are, grabbing that podium in Australia as well, I thought that was a really good drive. I mean, you know, even Fernando tried to really put the pressure on him and just said, you know, Lewis just, he had all of the answers. So it's not been a stellar season for Lewis, certainly not in qualifying. I think he really needs to pick that up, although I think both of the Mercedes drivers are really struggling with that car, especially on a Saturday. It seems like with Mercedes, it's like, if you're a Mercedes fan, you probably shouldn't watch on Saturday, but then probably you should watch on Sunday. And then for Ferrari fans, it's probably the other way around because the Mercedes is much stronger in the races, and that's where Lewis is taking the advantage. So yeah, I think he's driven, you know, really well given the pressure of how tight that kind of upper midfield is. And again, sat 4th in the championship. I think that's actually, you know, coming away with a podium, I think that's actually a really good haul after the first 5 races. Now, in 3rd place, and I'm actually going to talk about number 3 and number 2 together because they are teammates. These are the guys fighting for the World Championship. I have got Sergio Perez, and of course that means I've got Max Verstappen in 2nd. Now, I wanted to put both of these 2 guys together because, I mean, especially Sergio, I do think that, you know, Miami was a really annoying one because that was a big hit. You know, starting from pole position, Max starting down in 9th. That was a big race to lose for Sergio, and after the amazing weekend he had, you know, in Baku, coming off the back of 2 wins, I think the fact that Sergio has actually kind of brought a bit of a championship fight to Max is kind of credit to him. He really has stepped it up this year, and I really do think that when Max made that mistake in qualifying in Miami, it's because Sergio is putting him under pressure. You know, Max Verstappen is not taking Checo lightly. He's not just coasting around knowing that, you know, he's got this championship in the bag, and I feel like that's because of the pressure that Sergio has put on him. So, yeah, I had to give Checo, or I had to put Checo in this top 5 because he has stepped his game up. But I think Max, it's weird with Max actually, because obviously he's had a bit of bad luck. If you remember, of course, in Saudi, he had that, I think, drivetrain issue or gearbox issue, so he kind of qualified quite low down and wasn't able to really fight for the win. Azerbaijan was a bit of a weird weekend. He just was a little bit kind of off it, and Sergio just outpaced him in the race and kind of really held him off. But yeah, I mean, the thing about Max is that I'm not quite sure if this is the absolute Max performing at his absolute 100%, but what I've noticed this season is that he has been so smart. He knows where his car has the advantage, and that is in the race. And I think consciously he's taking less risks in both qualifying, especially in qualifying up against his teammate, and even when, for example, when Leclerc had his amazing, you know, quality performance in Azerbaijan, because I think like what Max, with the experience that he now has, he knows that his car is quick enough where he doesn't have to take as many risks, because the race is where he really comes into his own. We saw that obviously up against Lewis in their kind of lap 1 battle in Australia. Max just let Lewis have the position. He didn't put himself, I think the old Max of 2017, 2018, maybe 2019, I think he would have tried to stick it around the outside of Lewis, but Max just let Lewis go because he's got that long game picture where he knows the advantages that he has in the RB19. And, you know, Max Verstappen with the speed and talent and now the experience of a two-time world champion that he is, I think that's a very dangerous Max Verstappen. And yeah, he's kind of, I think he's a different driver to the one that he's been in previous years, but he is just as dangerous and still just as exciting to watch. So yeah, he's got the experience and all of the speed. So yeah, he had to be included in this list. And of course, our current championship leader. Number 1, however, is Fernando Alonso, currently whitewashing Lance Stroll, his brand new teammate, and of course his brand new team. He's kind of really whitewashing Stroll in qualifying. And I mean, in terms of the championship table, yes, you can say that he's driving the second fastest car and, oh, look, he's in 3rd place, but he's not just in 3rd place. He is absolutely maximizing the second best car on the grid that he's been given. I mean, 4 podiums in the first 5 races. I mean, you can't ask for more than that. And even in Azerbaijan, where he missed out on the podium, he was all over Leclerc, but just couldn't quite overtake him. So Fernando Alonso has been incredible. He's been, you know, he's given us some amazing moments, a few front row starts as well, of course, I think in Jeddah, and then also Miami as well. So he's delivering in qualifying. He's been given a good car finally to kind of show his talent, and he's not just taking it for granted, he is maximizing it. Again, 3rd in the championship, actually quite comfortable, a bit of a gap between him and Lewis as well. So what more, you know, does Fernando Alonso need to do? So he's got to continue this. However, there's no doubt that the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari, they're going to keep developing, they're going to keep pushing Aston Martin, but so far after the first 5 races, he's been close to flawless. And now let's get into my list of my top 5 worst drivers of 2023 so far. Now, beginning at number 5. Now, just as I wanted to include one of the kind of midfield drivers outside of the top 4 teams in my top 5 best, I wanted to also kind of equal it out a little bit. I wanted to put one of the drivers in the top 4 teams in my worst list, and ultimately in number 5, I have got Lance Stroll. Now, don't get me wrong, Lance has not been driving bad by any means or anything like that. Of course, at the beginning of the season, he was recovering from, you know, breaking his ankle, his wrist, sorry. So of course, it kind of wasn't the right preparation going into the season, but again, he is driving the second quickest car on the grid, and out of all of those drivers, out of those 3 kind of upper midfield teams, he currently is last in, you know, in the championship. He's in 8th place. And listen, when your teammate, you know, Fernando obviously is whitewashing Lance Stroll. Fernando is new to the team. I think it's because Fernando has been driving a better car. I think people almost take for granted, you know, stepping into a new team, a new environment, but Fernando can just fit into anywhere. And ultimately, I think Lance, even though he is obviously still recovering, driving the second best car on the grid, only being 8th in the championship, that's just not enough. That's just not enough. I know he had obviously the bad luck in Jeddah with the reliability, but getting knocked out of Q1 in Miami and your teammate is starting on the front row, that's just not good enough. That's just not good enough. So it's been a mixed start. And what's really strange is that the first couple of races, I think, were really strong for Lance, but it's weird. As he's kind of rehabilitated and I suppose got better and better, Alonso has actually gone a little bit further away, even in qualifying in terms of their gap. It was a lot closer at the beginning of the season. So, that's not really what we expected. We expected Lance to get closer and closer as he got better, but the opposite is happening. So, again, Lance has not done a bad job, but again, second best car on the grid, 8th in the championship. Yes, a bit of bad luck, but George Russell and Leclerc have also had bad luck. That's just not good enough. So yeah, in 5th place, I have got Lance Stroll. And next up, in 4th and 3rd, I have actually got 2 teammates yet again. And I have got both of the Alfa Romeo drivers. I have got Valtteri Bottas in 4th, and I've got Zhou Guanyu in 3rd. Now, to be honest, just in general, Alfa Romeo, what is going on over there? I mean, I'm wearing Alfa Romeo merch, by the way. I always love to whack this on for the videos, but listen, I'm a big Alfa Romeo fan, but what is going on over there? I mean, a brilliant start to the year. I mean, Valtteri Bottas with that 8th place finish in Bahrain, and even in Australia, Zhou kind of scoring points, finishing in 9th, and then the fact that Zhou has improved and definitely got a lot closer to Valtteri, especially in qualifying, that's great. Currently, it's 3-2 to Valtteri, so it's very close between those two, but just in general, and obviously the car plays a massive part. The car is clearly not good enough. The car seems to be inconsistent, and I'm not sure the team even knows why, because from all of the interviews, when Valtteri, a lot of the times, especially with Bottas, I look at him on the leaderboard and he's like fighting for last or second to last, and I don't understand why he's been having these shockers, whether it's his fault or not. But I do feel like Alfa Romeo have almost gone under the radar with how much they're underperforming now. Again, I know it's difficult for the drivers because the car clearly is not good enough, but yeah, I think both of them still need to kind of get a little bit more out of it, even though it is very difficult. But that's that kind of midfield that we have. It's difficult for everyone to score any points, let alone, even beat their teammates. So yeah, just in general, I feel like even though Zhou kind of has made a step up and is a lot closer to Valtteri in qualifying, I think both of those two drivers and the team, do need to step it up. I don't think they've been kind of, horrible or really bad, but someone has to go in my top 5 worst drivers. So yeah, I think both as a collective, as a team and drivers, all of them need to step it up at Alfa Romeo. I am watching you, Alfa Romeo. So let's move in to my top 2. Now, in 2nd place, I have got Logan Sargeant. Now, he is having a tough time up against Alex Albon. I mean, Alex very easily could have been kind of in that 5th place for one of my top 5, one of my slots in that best drivers. He's doing a great job. Logan is really struggling up against Alex. I mean, Alex is 5-0 up on Logan Sargeant in qualifying. So at the moment, he is whitewashing his rookie teammate. And Logan is kind of, he's had a bit of a tricky start to his F1 career, no doubt. The Williams, of course, is definitely a tricky car to drive. I think in terms of the worst cars on the grid, I've spoken about this in videos. I do think that it is between Williams and AlphaTauri on average. So that's actually another reason why I put Yuki in my top 5 best. I think that AlphaTauri is terrible, and what Yuki's doing with it is incredible. But so of course I do know that the Williams, especially for a rookie, is a tricky car to drive, but yeah, Logan has just had a bit of a rough kind of start, to be honest. I think he had a fantastic opening race in Bahrain, by the way. I mean, that opening lap was got to be one of the best opening laps for an F1 career I've seen for a long time. So yeah, that was a great race by him to get it to P12, kind of really clean finish for a rookie. But ever since then, it's just been a little bit rough. I mean, crashing, a lot of incidents actually, crashing in Saudi and qualifying and kind of getting frustrated and having another incident out of frustration, only finishing P16 there, crashing into the back of De Vries in Australia, which I thought he was very lucky not to get penalized for, and then also crashing in Baku as well, having an incident, I think it was in sprint qualifying for the sprint. So yeah, and then even Miami as well. He had, I think, an incident at the beginning of the race, and he had to change his front wing, and that's why, he's just had this really rough start. So, of course, it's still very early days, and I'm not that worried for him, to be honest, because he is a rookie, so he's got plenty of time to learn, and Alex is a difficult benchmark. Alex Albon is, I think a lot of people are learning over the last couple of years. Alex Albon is a great driver, undoubtedly. So, he's got a tough benchmark, but listen, I know he's a rookie, but this is Formula 1. You are judged in absolutes, and I need to see a bit more progress from Logan Sargeant. I think he's struggling quite a bit in qualifying as well. Quite a lot of knockouts in Q1. So yeah, I think there's a lot of areas for improvement, of course. But again, am I too worried about him? Not yet. Once we get to the middle portion of the season, especially once we go past some of the tracks that he's had a lot more experience on, if he is still struggling and perhaps still having a few incidents, then I think it's going to be a bit of a different conversation. Undoubtedly, in number 1, no surprise, is Nyck De Vries. And this is where I think I can make a bit of a comparison between De Vries and Sargeant, because Sargeant is your stereotypical rookie. You know, he's in his early 20s, he's inexperienced, he doesn't know yet how to handle the pressure of performing at the absolute highest level of motorsport and driving for a big organization like Williams, where you have so many people working at the team, so much pressure and so many eyeballs on you. And that's why I'm not surprised, you know, Sargeant is struggling as much as he is, because that's kind of what I would expect. But when when we talk about Nyck De Vries, he came into the season with different expectations. He is not a young driver. He is 3 years older than Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. He's a Formula E champion, he's a Formula 2 champion, and racing in Formula E, he knows what it's like to be into that, you know, in that kind of environment, that massive pressure, especially driving for the Mercedes Formula E team, a big organization. And none of that has transferred into Formula 1. I mean, he's really, I think, felt the pressure. He's had a lot of incidents, of course, and, you know, he is making progress, I think, especially in qualifying. He did out-qualify Yuki for the first and obviously only time in Miami. And I feel like he is getting closer to Yuki in qualifying, but then it's like one step forward, you know, and two steps back with Nyck De Vries, because he then shunts it into the back of Lando Norris before they even get into turn 1 in Miami, and that is it. It's basically his race over. So yeah, he's had a really tough start, quite a few incidents. Some of them, of course, are not his fault. You know, Australia, of course, you know, being kind of driven into by Logan Sargeant. So I do get that, but at the same time, he is really underdelivered. He hasn't shown even glimpses. He's been, you know, I haven't seen kind of the speed or even the racecraft, which we have seen from the likes of Yuki, for example. You know, he's pulled off some great overtakes. And in all departments, I think Nyck De Vries is really, really struggling. We all know this. He has massive pressure, you know, with the drivers, you know, even potentially Daniel Ricciardo replacing him mid-season. So yeah, it's been a tough start for Nyck De Vries, but undoubtedly he has been so far the worst driver in 2023. Well, there you have it. Don't forget to let me know your top 5 best and worst in the comments box below. I can't wait to see what you all have to say. And if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one.